Good morning, everyone. How you doing, Jay?
Good morning, Pierre. Welcome back. Missed you, buddy.
I was just saying that in the chat. This is the first time I have ever taken 3 consecutive weeks of vacation, and it was good. It was good. Well, 2 weeks were planned, and then late into the second week, was talking to a buddy of mine, and he's like, "I feel depressed. Winter's coming. I don't know what to do." I said, "Oh, let's head south. Let's talk about this.
See
Mexico,
what?
beach." And he went, "Done." So within like 4 days, we had the trip booked, the all the vaccine and COVID papers filled out, and we took off for Mexico. So that was really really fun.
Very cool. Yeah, I had a quiet holiday here in the U.S. Got to make some food, spend some time with my wife, enjoyed some quiet time, and got to go see another wonderful Brooklyn Nets basketball game. They who had a victory over the New York Knicks, which was very fun because listening to Knicks fans is always entertaining. But that's a whole other conversation, completely different. But I'm glad that we're back here this week. We took last week off because of Thanksgiving. Plus,
Yeah,
you're
I,
busy.
I want to apologize to the viewers because as I was getting ready to go on vacation, I figured, okay, so I scheduled all of the streams, and I forgot that while I was away, that you were off for Thanksgiving, and Rick was off for Thanksgiving, so nobody was around to pick it up. So I did notice I was in Mexico, and I picked up my phone in the morning and I started looking through it, and all of a sudden I was like, I'm seeing people in the chat
Mhm.
wondering whether or not we were having studio issues, and no, we weren't having studio issues. We were having a Pierre brain fart issue. I should have removed the scheduled stream, and I really apologize for you to you our viewers that were waiting for us patiently to get online, and we never did. Sorry.
Well, we're back this week, and it's another week of more updates from the world of Azure and Microsoft and things to kind of cover. And I really like this one, this little silly thing that we talked about yesterday when we were planning this. Microsoft every year comes up with some sort of charity initiative that can involve people who do things around Windows or developers. And so one of the things, if you want to stand up just a little bit, Pierre, and show them what you've got.
So
um,
this is the one from like 2 years ago.
yeah, so that's the one from 2 years ago, Dev the Halls. And then this year we've got the Microsoft Minesweeper ugly sweater. So for those of you who are Windows diehards and you love like Marquis here, wearing the wonderful ugly sweater ready for the season. I think these things are always fun. There's stuff around like you know Windows. There's stuff around Clippy that we always do that try to remind people that there's a fun aspect to all of this that you should keep in mind when you're thinking about like how we think about technology. There's got to be some fun involved. And so you can go to the Xbox Gear Shop. You can find this Minesweeper sweater if you want, and uh, Microsoft will be donating a portion of the proceeds for each sweater to Able Gamers, which is a charity. They are actually giving, I think, what is $100,000.
Yeah, that's it.
Last year was Girls Who Code, who got that, and apparently, these Minesweeper uh, sweaters are more popular than last year's because they
Well,
sold out in 24 hours.
I know. I got one. Did you get one?
No, I didn't get that in time.
I got one. I know it's a bit expensive for an ugly sweater, but
Sure.
I'm more looking at who's going to benefit from that. And Able Gamers this year is a very, very worthy cause. Kids should be able to play whether or not they're physically abled or not. So I really support that. And
Yeah, if
yeah,
you want to check out, there is a Able Gamers website. You can go over there. It is ablegamers.networkforgood.com. I'll put in the chat the link where you can go to for this particular charity initiative. So take a
yeah,
look at it. If you, it's a good time of the year for us to want to give back and help others be able to be part of everything, including video games.
yep, yeah. I'm really stoked about this one. Yeah, and just as a side note, sometimes you buy one of these ugly sweaters and they're like super itchy and uncomfortable. These ones are actually
Mm-hmm.
really good quality and they're soft and you can actually wear them without having to want to scratch the skin off of yourself. But
It's a nice soft wool or polyester or whatever it is.
well, whatever it is, there's probably no natural fibers in here, but hey, you only wear
Hey,
it for a week before Christmas, so
can only hope it's recycled plastic, right?
absolutely. All right, shall we get on with the news?
Yeah. Let's do it.
How about you
So
start us off?
sure. So other than ugly sweaters, we've got some actual Azure news, and I think that this is another big one. We love to talk about security when we talk about implementation of infrastructure, and containers are infrastructure. They run as processes on computers, and we think of them as real, like, disposable things. But there is a fair amount of security concerns that you still need to put in place when you're deploying applications to a
Yep.
service like Kubernetes. And so the AKS feature is now going to allow for an Azure Active Directory integrated cluster to be created without any local admin user. So that's removing one more potential intrusion point. So by default, when you create a K8s cluster, access to the cluster is through a local administration account, and this is not desirable for security reasons, as anyone can use that local account. So, and it's also just more difficult to manage them.
That's right. But I'm very stoked about the Azure Kubernetes, the AKS Azure AD integration now, because if you have an application that requires authentication to AD now through this same
Mhm.
service, through the same enhancements, now you can have that like right out of the box without having to go through a crap load of different configuration.
Yep. So it simplifies the integration. There are some limitations. So once you go into an AKS managed Azure AD, integration cannot be disabled. So you're either an Azure AD integrated Kubernetes cluster or you're not. Changing an AKS managed Azure AD integrated cluster to legacy AAD is not supported, and clusters without Kubernetes RBAC enabled are supported for the AKS managed Azure AD integration. So the process is what you would expect of creating a new Kubernetes cluster. Let's take a look at the docs for just a sec. Before you begin, you create your resource group, you create the AKS cluster, and this is with Azure CLI. Just pick your cluster type. Then you add this AAD admin group object IDs, and you can add your tenant ID. You get your output from JSON. It gives you the information that you've gone ahead, and now you're able to access this Azure AD. So typically, when you would run this AZAKS get credentials command, it would want to get you the credentials for the local account. And in this case, because you've integrated with an AAD account, it'll go ahead and specify those credentials. So it'll download into your config file that you have locally for kubectl the AD enabled user credentials, and then you'll be able to do that. So
Yep.
there we go. That's this week's big Azure Kubernetes edition. I always think that these are really big additions when you integrate AAD into any service, because it just reduces the amount of complexity associated with user management and identity management. You've got something that's trusted and tried and understood, known, and loved in Active Directory.
Yeah, there was another news, which is not part of our four segments today, but this week, and I haven't had time to really dive into it. But there was also Azure AD now has like a Kerberos for Azure AD, so that's possibly going to unlock some more capabilities. And I'm going to drill into that a little bit more this week, and maybe we'll talk about it next week.
Sure, yeah. Getting the supported authentication methods that people trust are important. We can move past the password. I think that's a big deal, is to move past the password, use whatever authentication methods that we know, that we trust, that are part of, I guess the best way to think is the part of single unified place. And AAD provides you that single unified place.
Yeah, no, that's you're absolutely right, and I can't wait to the day that we have no more passwords. Thank God for passwords management, passwords managers that will like randomly create those god awful. But I was trying to log in to I think it was like one of the service like Disney Plus or Netflix not too long ago, and I had to enter that long stupid hexadecimal password that I had in there, and now I was praying for them to actually turn to a password list where I would get just a notification on my phone to say, "Hey, you're trying to log in here. Put a code in and authorize." Two-factor for the win. Absolutely. All right. So next item in our journey this morning is the general availability of VPN Gateway NAT. And you might think to yourself, well, hasn't it always been available to do NAT on a VPN gateway? And yes, however, there's a few things that are a little different now. So now, if you have like two virtual network, so business to business, B2B configuration where it has two gateways in between, and if your address space on each side is the same, in the past it would fail because it wouldn't know how to navigate that specific NAT because your address is the same on both sides. Now with the added capabilities on the VPN, Azure VPN Gateway, you can enable static and one-to-many dynamic NATs, even for extending your network to areas where the address space will be the same or overlapping. So
yeah, I have got this cool little image that can give people a quick example of what it would look like. So if you can see, there's that main VNet behind the Azure VPN 10.10.1.0/24. And because there are natting rules set up that allow translation between the Azure network and your local network, you can see that we're able to maintain that same internal IP address. So subnet. So we're able to say internal 10.0.1.0.24 for branch 1. So if we have a number of client computers that are being used to access systems that are based in Azure, they won't have to have a different IP subnet to manage. They can all be done on the same one, which also can lead to a lack of IP collisions and things like that.
Yeah, and it's been a long time since we've had to deal with that. Like I remember, like network addressing and address space and subnet mask calculation have been the bane of network administrator existence for decades now. But now it makes it a little easier because you don't have to worry about, okay, so if I've got 100 branches, I've got to set up my subnet mask and my addressing so that there's no overlap across my entire organization. But now with this, you could basically cookie cutter your branch offices, and they would still be able to connect to the corporate environment through the Azure VPN gateway. and then you don't end up with those collision you just mentioned. So I think it's a win-win for the administrators, easier
Reduces
deployment.
complexity. It
Yeah,
reduces complexity of configuration when you're actually creating these networks. Also, just not having to maintain another address space on a different subnet just can be a lot easier for a network administrator who's got to manage both the cloud side and then also the local on-site side of it.
absolutely, absolutely. When do we move on to the next item? And that one is yours.
Sure. So now available as of December 1st is the SQL Server Infrastructure as a Service Agent extension for Linux. SQL VMs is generally available, which means we're making the capabilities of this SQL Server agent available for Linux platforms, specifically the Ubuntu one. So if you're running SQL Server on an Ubuntu Linux virtual machine, you can add the extension that'll give you the features on the SQL Server on Azure Blade within the Azure portal. So you can start seeing and how to manage this. So it gives you some features that will only enhance your SQL experience on Azure, especially for those of you who want to still run it on virtual machines, aren't ready to use something like Azure SQL.
So I'm not a big DBA guy.
Sure.
I tried in my old career to kind of try to stay away from databases, mostly because it's a very specialized skill set and I don't have it. So I
Mhm.
prefer to rely on the experts. So, but this is basically the same SQL that runs on like a Windows box. It's like
Mhm.
Microsoft SQL, but we're running it now on Linux. So a bit more flexibility as to how and where you're running it. And with this agent, I can now kind of like manage my like the licensing and the
Yeah.
visibility into the portal the same as I would regardless of where it's running. Correct?
Yes, correct. And
Okay.
so SQL Server started in, I believe, with 29 running on Linux, 2019, and it's the same SQL database engine that you're already used to. It's just put on Linux, so it helps reduce what your licensing requirements are. If you already also have some sort of Ubuntu enterprise licensing situation, and it's not worth it for you to start using something in Windows, or you don't have the Windows administration experience, maybe you're in a situation where you've been told, look, we need to migrate off of our on-prem Windows hosted SQL servers, but we need to cut cost in the process.
Yep.
Well, in this case, like all you're really doing is you're licensing the SQL server that you need.
Mhm.
So SQL on Linux, it gives you the same replication support, support for MSDTC, Open LDAP support, machine learning services, TempDB improvements, Polybase on Linux, and change data capture, CDC. So you can use SQL Linux in containers, or you can use it in a virtual machine. And in this case, the virtual machine is just extended with your visibility via Azure by using this new extension. And I think it's just a matter of specifying the agent install with the AZ extension command. I could be wrong, but I think that's all you really need to do to get started if you already have one of these servers up and running.
Yeah. And I did read the documentation page late last night. Uh, as you mentioned, right now it's just Ubuntu, but they are working on more distributions that will become live in the near future. So,
Yep. Just so, like I was saying, there are a few ways to install that extension. You can do it via the Azure portal. You can see it SQL LAAS or IaaS extension. You can do it via a PowerShell command. And there are some limitations. Only Server VMs running on the Ubuntu is supported, like we just mentioned. We're looking for more. Ubuntu Linux Pro not supported. Uh, Generalized images are not supported, so you need to use the Ubuntu with SQL specific disk image.
oh,
Um,
okay.
Yep, that's what it says here. Only SQL Server VMs deployed through the Azure Resource Manager are supported. SQL Server VMs deployed through Classic are not, which makes a lot of sense because you're using ARM to do some of this management.
Yeah.
And you only can do single instance, multiple instances aren't supported. But, it's early. It's
Hey,
early into the product release. And
baby
so,
steps, baby steps.
yeah, absolutely. So
Cool.
what do we got next, Pierre?
What do we have next? Right now, we have the next a thing is, let me share the screen. Is this one was I was a little hesitant to put that in, but it is. I came in some situations lately that required this, and it wasn't quite available yet. You can now audit in your audit log, your monitors. You can actually identify the log queries. So if
Okay.
somebody's going into your Azure monitor logs and querying that, you can now audit who is querying your logs.
Sure. Just another form of auditing of the data, even the metadata. I believe that, when you talk about compliance, there could be requirements to say, well, what is the process of querying this data? Where does it come from? Who does it? When
Who
do they
did
do
it?
it?
When they did it? It captures what the query command was, at the time, where it came from. So you have an audit trail of anybody who's looking at all of your logs, whether that be your application logs, your system logs, your custom logs, anything that's ingested into Azure Monitor. You can now audit whoever and whatever is querying that, whether it's a service or a user. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Especially in terms of compliance, where you have to be able to show to auditors, for example, who accessed that data. This is a big win for me, I think.
Yeah. And enabling it, you can see right here, you can go into the Azure portal, go to Azure Monitor, select your diagnostic settings, and then locate the select workspace. Or you can use the Log Analytics Workspaces menu, select the workspace, and then select the diagnostic
Yeah.
settings. And there's also the availability to do it via ARM. And then here is all the audit data created. So time generated, correlation, AAD, object ID, all this stuff. Like I said, when it comes to like things like governance, compliance, it's all super important to have access to, because you could get audits of your audits from third parties.
But it may be as simple as you want to know whether or not your security, your RBAC configuration is right. So
Mm-hmm.
you run an audit to see who is querying your logs, and you could say, okay, well, this person has no reason or no should not have access to these logs, and it kind of gives you an opportunity to review your RBAC configuration. That could be as easy as that, or as complicated as auditors coming in and say, give me all of the information as to who accessed any logs pertaining to the machine X, for example, in case of a breach or something. So
Mm-hmm.
it's something. Well, good auditing, and actually, Jared mentioned that in the chat right now. Having good auditing capabilities is very important, and Jared would know. He's an SRE running internal Microsoft systems, so
Mm-hmm.
I take my cues from him for stuff like that.
Yep.
All right.
So hey, are you feeling festive, Pierre?
I am. Are you?
I'm trying to get into the spirit. My birthday is on Christmas Day, so I
Are you
celebrate that.
serious?
Yeah, so I celebrate that. But as everybody's getting ready for their big holiday, and for those of you who celebrate Hanukkah, happy Hanukkah. I hope you're having fun. You're lighting the lights. You're spinning the dreidel. You're having that whole good time. I remember those days when I was a kid. It was definitely some special time. Uh, and of course, those of you who celebrating Christmas, you want to get all your wishes in to Santa early, and to mom and dad and all your family. But in the meantime, if you want to be able to do some really good festive giving, there is the Festive Tech Calendar 2021. It's run by Richard Hooper and Gregor Suttle. I always struggle on saying his last name. I apologize, Gregor. But all through December, there are community-driven talks and things like that. Someone in our chat mentioned that they're doing a whole lot on YouTube, which you can see that there are a number of different sessions on the Festive YouTube page. Let me bring that up for everybody for a sec. They've got a whole.
And as you mentioned, they are collecting pledges to raise money for Girls Who Code. So again, another wonderful cause that we should support as much as we can.
Yep. So go to their Just Giving page, and you can go ahead and make your donations to these really, really good places that need your help. I know Girls Who Code is a great organization. I've spent some of my time sharing and my money with that org, and I appreciate it. And there's so many great speakers that are a part. I know our own April Edwards is part of it. There's so many people that are from our community that want to be able to share this information with you and do it in a way that's fun.
And even our own Johnny Chips, who is currently in the chat room, is going to be participating. So I'll be sure to catch that one. Sarah Lean, our old friend who is now moved on to another role, wish her well. And she's also going to be participating. I saw some tweets from her. It's going to be a month full of goodness.
And you know, she's always still making great Azure content, and it's sometimes I forget she doesn't work at the company anymore because she's still building some great stuff around Azure.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And while we're talking about community, the boys are back.
The boys are back in town.
The boys are back in town. So Patch and Switch is well, I was a little annoyed with that. They're taking over my time slot today at noon Eastern time or 9 Pacific for another episode of the Patch and Switch show where two guys that couldn't cut it in the landscaping business have decided to start a podcast about IT pros and all things geeks. So you can join them on Twitch for Patch and Switch, and I think they're starting kind of like their holiday season, so we're going to that. And Johnny Chips actually says that he loves Patch and Switch. I just find it entertaining at the end of the week to watch the shenanigan occur and to see what trouble Rick has gotten himself into during the week. So it's fun.
Yeah, apparently Rick is surprised he's got one today. To what I say, get the podcasting. You know, you're the boss.
Come on, get some work done.
Chop
chop chop.
Chop chop.
All right. He is in the chat room. So, yeah, better go to start the morning routine. Yes, boss man, you should. And to conclude our episode this week, let's talk about the Learn module of the week. And this was a suggestion from you, considering we had news about running SQL on Linux. So why don't you give us a little intro onto that one?
Yeah, if you want to be able to actually run SQL Server on Linux and learn more about it, Microsoft Learn has free education. It's all gamified, so you can see how many experience points Pierre has. He is a what is that? What level are you? A level?
Oh, I level 8. I'm way behind.
A level 8 Azure Wizard.
I'm far behind Oren, who has done every single Learn module on the platform.
Yeah, shout outs to Oren and Sonia. They are
they're machines.
Masters and commanders of Microsoft Learn. So yeah, another great module that you take a look at if you want to learn how SQL on Linux works. This is a great introduction. I really recommend it.
Yep. All right. So we are done with this episode of AZ Update. You are away next week.
Yeah, I'm going out to the lovely land of Los Angeles, West Coast. I haven't been to the West Coast in quite a while, and it's going to be nice. Don't worry, I will be wearing my mask. I'm going to stay safe. It's a nice big 5.5 to 6 hour flight from here in New York, and I am not going to be careless. I'm going to take care of myself and make
Perfect.
sure that I'm safe.
Perfect. Come back to us safe. But next week, folks, to help me out with the show, since Jay's going to be away, I think my boss is going to be joining us.
Yeah, Rick was a great guest to have on. I guess it was
2 weeks
2 weeks
ago?
ago.
2 weeks
Yeah,
ago.
he and I had some fun.
Good. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, children of any age, have a great weekend, and we will see you next week.
Cheers, y'all.
Cheers.